All right, you guys, welcome to another episode of Let's Get Naked. Today, we are stripping down to get to the core of who Lauren White is and how metaphysics plays a role in her life and her business. Lauren is an award-winning sexologist, mentor, and confidant for women who want to explore the uncharted waters of their turn-on, their pleasure, and their power for a more impactful business. Welcome, Lauren.
Thanks, Colette. So excited, just ecstatic to be here. Ecstatic. Yeah, I just find it so fascinating that we've played together before. We've messaged each other before. You've been on my podcast, and it just feels like such a beautiful moment. I'm so grateful to be invited onto yours. Let's Get Naked. I couldn't resist the name. I was like, of course.
I was intentionally cheeky with that name, even though we're exploring topics like consciousness and quantum physics and spirituality. It's my perspective is if you can't have fun with it, don't do it. And so these sometimes dense, complex concepts, they can actually be fun and cheeky if we invite them to be, if we allow them to be. So so with that being said, can you share a bit about your background and your journey to becoming a sexologist with a particular focus on what may have been a pivotal point that or experience in your life that led you on the path that you're on?
Oh, yes, I'd be honored to. I'd be happy to. Sexology. I couldn't resist the name. As soon as I found out that there was a degree, not a certificate, but a degree in sexology, it really was like everything inside of me, all the lights just turned on. I was like, there's a sexology degree out there?
Mm-hmm.
I just knew. I'm claircognizant, and I just knew. I was like, this has been made for me. Like, this is what I want to do. And to give a bit of background, I was going through my Saturn return. I was around 27 years old, and I was working as a clinical nurse specialist in drug and alcohol in an opioid treatment service. So that's providing people with methadone and buprenorphine as a substitute for heroin and other opiates. And I loved what I did at the time, but I also had the foresight to think, I'm not going to love this forever. I'm not always going to want to be in the clinic. And what else do I want to learn about that builds upon what I know? And I just started Googling gender and sexuality courses, like literally just Googling gender and sexuality courses. So I was like, I've done mental health, I've done drug and alcohol. What's the next taboo, basically?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when sexology came up through university here in Australia. And I just knew I had to do it. And I was at that point in time where I was married. I felt quite sexually repressed. I felt like I loved my husband. That wasn't the question, but I just didn't feel, I knew that there was more for me, and that's the only way I could describe it. I was like, I just didn't feel very experienced. I felt like even though I'd had some wild earlier years, I was still quite held back sexually, and just thought, well, this is a way of not only creating a new career pathway, because no one studies sexology because they've got no interest in their own sexuality, basically. Like there's always a personal piece. And I just knew that in studying sexology, it was going to start to crack open something in me, and it did. But the curious piece is it wasn't the degree itself, it was everything else I did outside of the degree.
Yeah, absolutely. That resonates for me as well, as I've recently stepped back into academics in pursuit of a PhD. I feel like I've already got the PhD from 20 years of deliberate life experience in the field and self-reflection, examination, and working with people at a very deep level. but there's a call toward the academic element of this work so that I can further intelligently articulate this very, intangible stuff in such a way that it lands for a particular audience that might not really be typically interested in such esoteric endeavors. And so I hear what you're saying. It's like, okay, it's all of the factors that surround that point of contact, so to speak, that are as significant as that one thing that is calling to you.
Exactly. It's academia is an anchor point, and it has its place, and I would never, everything has its place and everything has its time. But it wasn't the thing that taught me about sexuality, because ultimately it's a public health degree, and that means that you're going to look at dysfunction as almost like as the centerpiece of it. And it really was my own journeying into books, other courses, retreats, working with practitioners. Like I just went 2012, I just went full ball into all of it, and I did everything I could. I was insatiable. I was just eating everything up and studying sexology and working as a nurse still. And it was just an incredible year. It was such a pivotal year for me. 29, turning 30, to just go all in. And I learned so much about myself, and it would be a bit cringe to read some of it now, but I'm really glad I kept a lot of records of what I did that year and what I learned and who I worked with. And I'm really glad I have that private record of everything. But I'm with you. I feel like I live in an and both more universe. So like both academia and what it is that you want to learn outside of academia. I think we can blend them really beautifully and ultimately be sovereign in what it is that we choose to do, and to say, I really love that piece and I want it to come with me, and I really love that piece and I want that to come with me. That part doesn't resonate so much, I'm going to leave that. Like, this is where we become these incredible practitioners, because we've just blended these different worlds so beautifully and weaved this beautiful web. And I think you and I have both done that in a very unique way. Like no two people on earth have done what you and I have done. Like, to put it in that framework, like no one has done the same pathway as you. And I know for a fact that no one's done nursing and then counseling and then sexology and then sexological bodywork. And I know that for a fact. So it's beautiful that we have these options, and it's beautiful that we have practitioners on the other side that have just taken all the best parts and can just like deliver it in such a succinct way.
Yeah. And I just want to point out that for those who might be new to the concept of metaphysics, metaphysics is the area of philosophy that deals with the nature of reality. I like to think of metaphysics as the bridge between our current scientific understanding of physics, so quantum physics, with ancient spiritual wisdom. That, so it's like the science and the spirituality, and there's a bridge, and metaphysics is a bridge that is inclusive of both. We'll call it schools of thought, just for sake of simplicity here. So what I want to ask you, Lauren, is in the context of your work, how has metaphysics influenced yours and the professional success of your clients?
Oh, fabulous question. I'll do my best with this one, because I do find it I do find it incredibly challenging to describe exactly what happens in my work because it does feel like magic. It feels
Yeah,
like something ancient emerges
that's
and it just
that's the
blends with
metaphysics.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So I'll do my best with words. Words are my love language. So I'll activate my Gemini moon and get some beautiful words flowing. Um, Essentially what happens is, and how I feel, just hearing that question for the first time, how I feel metaphysics comes through in my work is when a woman is in front of me, I am already scanning what is going on. I've got x-ray vision. I'm already scanning her level of comfort in her body, her level of congruence with what it is that she's saying and what it is that I'm seeing in her body. I am blending things that I read about, like words of Jung that I read 20 years ago, with like that claircognizance, I just know, with Betty Martin's Wheel of Consent from what I learned in sexological bodywork too. I'm just blending all these worlds all, like together seamlessly all the time. So when someone sits before me, when a woman sits before me, I'm listening to her words, I'm reading her face, I'm looking at her body, I'm looking at her positioning, what's she doing, where is their alignment, where is their misalignment, where am I hearing what she's not saying?
Yeah.
Where am I able to, how am I able to take her to what I call the thing under the thing under the thing? Because this is my problem. This is what women and humans do. We start by saying, this is my problem. Okay. And when we dig a little bit deeper, that's the surface of the problem. And where I think metaphysics supports me in this work and the women who choose to receive it is we're able to journey here and then here and then here. And I'm positioning my hands lower and lower and lower. And to go into that real shadow work, to have a look at the underworld and the undercurrents of what's really driving her and what her fears are. And when you get to that, that's when you can start to unlock the dormant success, the dormant satisfaction that's lying inside of a woman's body. Because there's old patterning there that's often not hers to hold. And the patterns and the masks I'm usually disrupting in my work are those of the martyr.
Okay.
The martyr.
Say
There's
more.
a
Say
lot of
more.
martyr. Women come to me often, not always, but with a thread of martyr mode, or it's quite a dominant energy in them. They're also coming with this mask of perfection, like I can't get anything wrong. I have to do the best at all times. I have to be seen a certain way. And another really sneaky mask that they come to me with is this, what I call the mask of hyper independence. I can do it myself. It all comes back to me. It's only me that can do it. I can't dare ask for support. And it sounds like the martyr, but it's a little bit different in that energy. And it's when women get really, really locked in a hyper arousal state of like, it has to be me that does it. So the way that I can best answer your incredible question, which is one of the best questions I've ever been asked, one of the most deep and activating questions I've ever been asked, is I am looking at simultaneously at consent, nervous system, somatics, energy, words. I am looking at all of that together, and it is the past and the present that is coalescing in that moment. But the weird part is that I also have this futurist brain that's like pulling things from the future into the now as well. So it's all just converging in one magical moment. And that's the best way I can describe what happens when I sit in front of a woman who says, can you guide me? Can you help me?
Yes, yes. And beautifully said. I was tracking every single word of that. But I might have a little of an advantage because it's very, similar to what the workings for myself. when I'm working. So, but yeah, I think you nailed it. You use the words to articulate it. If someone who wasn't in our space and who hadn't, ever considered working with someone who has extrasensory perceptions and stuff, the ability to see beyond what is being presented right in front of them. So how so it's incredible to me, right? And I love that we're just having this conversation to expand and contextualize and stretch like Play-Doh this idea.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about your have you known your whole life that you had this? You said clear cognizant. So have you had this your whole life, or rather, have you known your whole life that you have it? And if so, have you always been like loving, responsible, respectful at using it to your highest ability? Or has there been something else going on? Because I have a something else story going on. Like a denial story and stuff. But I'm curious about you.
Yeah. I've had it my whole life and I've been aware of it, but I've not always honored it, is the short answer. So yes, like I go so far as to say I think there's always a shadow. There's always a beautiful shadow. I love shadows, by the way, and I love shadow work. But I think that there's always I think every person, I know I'll be in ownership of what I'm saying. I definitely have moments where it went on alert and I went, shh, push it down. Like my head is deciding I'm going to do this thing, even though that magical, intuitive part of me that has foresight is saying something different. It's like, shh, I'm going to do this instead. Like, because there's a part of me that just has to know what happens when I do this thing, or what happens when I take this risk, or, but it's not always coming from an embodied place. So to rewind, one of my first memories is I was a toddler, very little, very small, playing on the floor, and a bookcase just slammed down in front of me. And I knew in that moment that I knew it was going to happen. And it's just very lucky I was positioned back, because I knew that I would have died if I had have been, like, I was just sitting up, like I was very little. I would have been just 1+. And I knew, sounds so far-fetched, I knew that if I was positioned any more forward that I would have died, and that would have been the end of my life. So there was this stroke of luck that happened when I was very, very little. And the next most profound memory I have is I was sitting in my classroom when I was 6 or 7, and someone walked in, one of the admin walked in, and they had an envelope in their hand. And I just thought to myself, whatever they have in their hand, it's for me. It's for me. I just knew. And I was like, Lauren, you've won a joy flight on this plane for Father's Day for this raffle that you entered. And I was like, well, hey, and I just knew. I was just like, I was not surprised. I just knew. So this signal would kind of flare up throughout my life. And then, as I said, there'd be times where I'd just go, fuck off, signal. I just want to do this thing. I just want to take this risk. I just want to sleep with my ex another time. After 6 months of sleeping with my ex, I just want to sleep with him one more time. Just wanting, looking, craving. And this is something that you and I talked about, looking for love, like looking for that love in all of those places, and knowing that it wasn't always for my highest good. I would like to credit myself now that life has progressed and I've learned a little bit more. I am using that claircognizance, and I just want to normalize that claircognizance, or your intuition, it's got some serious competition. And I want to bring the humanity into this conversation, because this is no perfect art. The competition that I've had for my claircognizance has been, what I didn't know was an autoimmune condition. So the autoimmune condition I have was competing with that claircognizance, because it makes me quite it makes me quite sped up and like an overactive. And so it can create this sense of ungroundedness and this scattiness. And I am the most I've been in a long time at the time of this conversation. So again, it's perfect timing. But I want to bring the humanity into this. Like, you can have all the gifts in the world, but if your body is going through something physically, it can be up against some serious competition. And in the case of my condition, which is called Graves' disease, what can happen is it can be a serious threat, because all of that gift is up against being sped up, being scatty, heart racing, everything's fast, everything's up. And it can be very challenging to listen to a voice that is soft, that is clear, that is anchored in, when everything in your system is sped up and on a different wavelength. So I just want to bring that in, and I hope that helps someone listening, because autoimmune conditions are massive for women in particular. I just want to bring that in, because whatever your gifts are, there can be challenges. And I say to people, always go back to your health first. Like, go back to your health, look at the root, go to the root of your health, and then all of that magic, all of that intuition, all of that's going to be, it's going to be emanating from a far more anchored, centered place than if you're trying to do both, to do both at once.
Yeah, I absolutely can relate to that. I know that for me, when I feel off, when things aren't working, fluidly and from a magical place, it's usually because I haven't been honoring my body's unique needs. So a lot of rest, and exercise, a particular kind of exercise. Like, I'm not sprinting on a treadmill or doing things like that, but when I am, we'll call it out of balance or out of alignment, it's usually because I'm not honoring my body's needs. And again, that could be the direction of rest and relaxation and restoration, or it could be I need to get my ass out of the goddamn chair, off the couch, whatever, go move it, and find some harmony within that. And then usually I'm right back online, not online, but online. Right. And you're right. There is a lot that is competing for the attention of our minds and our bodies, especially for those of us that are entrepreneurs, and we're often working on some project or some quote unquote deadline to get something out, to make something happen, because we're dependent upon ourselves for all that gets created in this business. And so sometimes I'll just speak for myself. Sometimes I'm sitting at my desk, like I am now, for way too many hours on end and way too many consecutive days without the balance of the exercise and the right kind of restoration. Like, just sitting on the couch, eating the carbs at the end of the day, watching TV. I love to do, but that's not the kind of restoration that I necessarily need when I'm giving all of my energy to writing a research paper or getting a website uploaded or some such thing.
Yeah, and you've struck a really beautiful point, which is about that tapping into that knowing of what is the right movement for you. And this is something that I talk to women about, and I put on social media. And I'm going to say the thing that a lot of people don't say. There's only a few people out there that, that might agree with me. Sometimes women don't need rest. Sometimes they need the complete opposite in order to get to rest. So I just want to put this permission out here. I think sometimes, I imagine a lot of your listeners identify as high performers, and they are on most of the time. And people say just rest, just relax. It's not that you don't need that. It's that to just go from up here to down here is like the world's biggest ask, right? You're asking people to go, not you personally, but the world is asking people to go from all up to almost like collapse, almost like to dorsal vagal. And it's like, before you do that, do you know what a more optimized pathway is probably going to be for you? Is to actually move quite vigorously first, even though you're stressed, even though you feel taxed, even though you feel exhausted, in order to then go, because you've used all this mental cerebral energy, but your body's been sitting at the computer for 3 days, like we talked about. And full permission, we all have surges, like we have surges of our energy where it's like, it's good to do that. That's not bad. It's just, sometimes it's good to do that. You're on fire with that task.
Yeah.
The invitation is, when you do want to collapse, maybe you need to move quite vigorously first, so that when you do drop down on the couch, A, you don't want the carbs, B, you don't need the TV or the Netflix, and you do get that sense of, like that spent satisfaction. And I feel like that bridge, like, to use a word, what metaphysics is, I feel like that bridge is missing from the conversation. So if you find it hard to rest, there is nothing wrong with you. I find it incredibly challenging. But what I've worked out is, in order to come down, I need to be like, go into a different version of up, and then I've got a better chance of dropping down. Otherwise, I miss this important step, try to just sit there and my brain is still going a million miles and my body's still agitated because it needs to move. I'm like, all I wanted was to rest and I've got it right in front of me, but I don't want to do it. Why don't I want to do it? What's wrong with it? It's like, there's nothing wrong with me. I just haven't moved adequately, or I haven't spoken. Maybe I need to talk to someone and get something out. I need to express more. There we go. Need to express so I can rest.
Nice.
And maybe you need the same as well. So I just want to put that in, because I think it's missing from the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think us high performers need to hear that.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. That's not something I had considered before, but it makes total sense, right? If we're utilizing all of this mental energy and funneling it and focusing it on a creative endeavor, and then we feel sort of depleted. Well, the mind might be depleted, but the body still has the energy in it. And so the couch, carbs, and Netflix isn't necessarily a restorative experience. It's just a sort of a numbing of what the nervous system is experiencing. And so then we don't actually refill the tank, because it's like, so I really love that you brought that up. And you said something that made me think of it, like sparked a thought about flow states. Are you familiar with flow state?
Yes. I love the book. I just love the classic book. I'm so sorry, I cannot pronounce the author's name. It's very long.
I think it's Mikhail.
He's got a beautiful name, and I'm not going to do it justice, so I'm not going to try, but the book is simply called Flow. So please read it if you haven't, and take notes. Like, it is a kind of book where I go so far as you're going to want to take notes when you read it. It's beautiful. But yes, I love flow states.
Yeah. I think it's pronounced Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, but don't quote me. But yes, it's okay. So then, what do you do for yourself to get into flow state? And so that's one part one of this question. What do you do to get into flow state for yourself? And what do you think flow state is? Like, if we're looking behind the scenes, like what is flow state?
Yeah, we're going behind the velvet curtain. I like it. I think one of the ultimate flow state, there's a couple of answers for me. Sex is definitely a flow state. Like, definitely, like good quality sex is definitely a flow state. And when I say sex, the way that I use that word is not penis in the vagina intercourse or necessarily having anything inserted. It doesn't even have to include genital touch. It's just anything that feels erotic, that has that charge to it. And for me, dance is the best mirror for sex. So when I dance, I feel like I've had sex. I just go like, because my personal definition of sex is so all encompassing, and it's tapping into the eroticism and the sensuality. So dance is definitely for me, the most effective, and it's not about speed, but it just so happens to be the fastest way that I get into a flow state. Because I dance from a place, I dance from my heart, I dance from my sacral center. I dance in a way that brings me pleasure. And I do love imagining that there's an audience, but I'm still never dancing for them. I'm still dancing for me. Like I love an audience. I'll be totally honest. So the Leo in my chart loves an audience. But emphasis on not dancing for the pleasure of others, dancing for the pleasure of how it feels good for you. So it could look completely wonky, but the way that I'm moving my body, it just feels good. It just goes with whatever I need in that moment. Yeah. So for me, my ultimate, I love writing as well. Writing and dancing and sex are moving towards that orgasmic wave, like that flow that when you get into the flow and you're like, oh, I'm on the wave, like that. They are my favorite forms of flow. And I just have to put one more in. It's also a fucking good conversation, like a fucking, like, I can't think of anything else but the topic of this conversation that you and I are in right now. Like, it's like that all-encompassing where everything just goes quiet, and that's what happens when I work. I don't know where I know where I am, but there's nothing else happening, but I'm just in the world of the woman that is speaking with me, and all the parts of my mind are lit up and my body's lit up, and I've got like the futuristic part of me is like pulling things from there, and just my mouth is saying words because the claircognizance is just going, I just know. That is a flow state as well. Like work for me is a flow state. So you'll find me doing all of those things on the regular as a way of getting into flow. And to answer your question, what is flow? It is, for me, it is the culmination of a physical and energetic state where your body is supremely content and your heart is beating methodically, but it's not racing high off the charts with anxiety, and it's not in that collapsed dorsal vagal state that we mentioned before. It's just in a really steady rhythm of aliveness and alertness, and there's an absence of worry, and there's clarity, and there's a tranquility. It's like these seemingly opposing states all converge into this one beautiful like banquet of sensation where it's just like it all just makes sense. It like all just comes together and makes sense. And you are literally just feeling like this, but you don't want to stay there. Like again, like flow is a beautiful state to attain. Do we want to live there? No. Why not? Why wouldn't we want to live in flow? Like it sounds so beautiful, right? It is. But the more you avoid like the high stress, the uncomfortable and the deep dark lows, the less likely you are to get to that flow state, or what I call climactic. And that's my body of work when I work with women. It's called climactic. And I just feel like you want all of it. Like personally, I want a life where I go to the deep dark and the shadows, and I want like the stress and the buzziness, and I want all of it because it all informs and potentiates the flow state. So I don't just I love it, and I love it when I'm in it, but I don't necessarily want to live there because there's other lessons to be learned in all the other variations of somatics, nervous system, humanity, emotions. It's all welcome. It's all welcome. We just don't want to live permanently in any of those.
Yeah, I completely agree. And my understanding or interpretation of what you just so beautifully articulated and shared from your own experience, which I love even more, right? We're not talking hypothetically, we're actually talking about you and your experience of flow and how you get into it and how you experience and what it means for you. And I love that. And my interpretation of that climactic flow state and the reason we don't want to hang out there is because that's where we came from. We came from that nebulous, ecstatic, all creative potential into, oh, did you see that? What?
Timing couldn't have been better.
Is it something I said? Anyway. So we came from that and we embodied, we became human so that we could experience all the other, the not self,
Yes.
right? And so when we're in flow, my experience is that sort of the ego, the veil of the ego, the construct, the confinement of the ego is lessened. And so with that, the lessening of that sense of separation and needing to figure shit out and problem solve, survive, once that's lessened, we're more in the experience of our infinite beingness, and it is a beautiful thing. And the way that we get to experience that as human beings through dance, through sex, through our body of work that we are blessed to have created, that is an expression of our highest self. But yes, but we don't live there, because then we would just be returning, and we will one day return to that intangible state of ecstasy, of godliness, of perfection. And this human experience is designed for us to have both, right? It's a both and world that we live in. God and our humanity, right? The bliss and the shadow.
Yes.
And all the other shit, right?
Yeah.
That's the name of the game that we're living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm with you. Like that is what we're here. That is what we're here to do. And we're here. There's so much. I think people avoid that shadow because they think shadow is dark, therefore bad. And it turns sour before people even have an opportunity to explore what's there. Go into your shadows and into what your shadows want from you and what they're asking of you and the attention that they desire. That is the richest, most fruitful work I've ever done. And you and I did some of that together last year, because I was just like, I am in the shit. I'm in the shit and I don't get what this thing wants of me. And you were able to extract in like 2 occasions of us talking about it, exactly what that thing under the thing was, that I couldn't, like, no one is immune. When you do this work, it doesn't mean that you know for yourself. We've all got our own blind spots, and it's like, and we've all got our own thing under the thing. And for me, it was just under this rock, and you were able to like take that rock off and say this, and this is how they interconnect. And this is what the ultimate wound is, that is here to be course corrected so that you can really support other people who either have a similar wound or their own wound. And I feel like that's what we're all here to do. We're not here to just evade that part and take others there. We're here to do it for ourselves first, and to be completely candid about it and to go there. And I'd say from the time I turned 40 to the time I turned 41, I was a year in the shadows, like a year of just like digging. And you got me, you just got me off to such a strong start. And then it would subside, and then it would rear its head again, and then it would subside, and then it would come back again. And I'd be like, oh, Again.
Yeah.
So it's not being human, and having a climactic, ecstatic life is not for the faint at heart. But if you don't go to those shadow parts and really explore what they want from you, really explore the wound, really explore what your small child is still tugging and asking of you, saying, please give me this, please course correct this. I am asking you, and you just keep band-aiding it with this thing that isn't working. It's not meeting my needs. It's not meeting how I need to be loved. And it's just like, if we don't go there, in my opinion, we cannot get to climactic, orgasmic states of like, because the thing is just going to dampen that experience, and it's going to dominate that experience. And all I can say from my own life is, the older I get, and I've had vaginal deliveries with my babies, like, which was big on my body, but the older I get, the better my climaxes get, because the more I've dug deep. And I haven't had my best climax yet. I haven't had it yet. It's still coming. It's still on its way, because I'm willing to just pause and go, oh, what is the thing? This has come up again. What is the thing? And that might be the rest of my life. And if I'm not okay with that, I've got a serious problem. But if I'm accepting of that, then my life is just going to keep getting better and better. And all it means is, every now and again, I need to pause, look at the thing, go, oh, did I overlook it this time? Did I try to band-aid it again? And that is my life. Like, that is my thing. And that's okay. That's more than okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's rare. Like, let's just be honest. Not everybody is willing to do the work. In fact, most people will never investigate their shadow or their ego, or, these self-reflective kind of self-inquiry, because it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not typically supported or normalized yet. But I think we're finding more and more of us are, like you said, I'll put my interpretation on something that you said.
Yeah, please.
We shift the shadow from being something that's bad, or, something that we don't want to look at, don't want to feel, don't want to touch, don't want to admit, to something that's like, okay, it's and also this is part of me. So the acceptance of the shadow side, or the wound, or the darkness, or the failure, or the incompetence, or the, the self, the shame, or whatever, however it is manifesting, in my experience, the most profound reconciliation comes from the simple act of acceptance of that which I was previously hiding, shaming, judging, condemning, in some way labeling that as unwanted, unlovable, not me, when in fact it's all me. And so the acceptance of the allness, I am all of that.
Yes.
Is like, creates sort of an instant reconciliation, which doesn't always mean my physical world is magically transformed. It will become more in alignment with that acceptance and reconciliation. But that one thing, acceptance, is so fucking powerful.
Yes. Yes.
And it's also my experience and observation is it's also the hardest thing for us to do when we live in such a dualistic world, society, right? The whole framework for reality is the duality, where we perceive good, bad, right, wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so then we're just inherently judging parts of ourselves, and certainly what we consider to be others, good, bad, right,
Mm-hmm.
wrong. Like that is just so inherent, intrinsic. It's just the part of the fabric of our self, like our reality, and inclusive of who we see ourselves to be in this reality. So I don't want to project that it's hard. It's just an observation, and speaking for myself as well. It's been the hardest thing to do, to accept that which I had previously judged as bad about myself.
Agreed. Yes. Hardest thing, and you mentioned a word at the beginning of the podcast, which was fun. We can have some fun. Like when we go to hard, we can have some fun, and we can have some fun with it. And hold on. Yes, I hear all of that. I hear all of that. And something that I say in my mind is take it seriously and you can have fun with it. Or take this part of life seriously and you can have fun with it. And women do not have enough fucking fun. Like,
I know.
high performers especially do not have actual playful fun, because the energy is so much in here, and the avoidance of the acceptance, because the judgment and the shame and the sense of powerlessness over that wound is just so strong. So suppress it, swallow it down. But I get very now, because I just sat there with you and let the snot fall down, and I've still got a note in my phone. My big, every entrepreneur has a massive notes app, right? I'm not alone. But I can literally just search for, I think, wound, and my notes from our time together come up. And now I can read it without that charge, because I just let the snot fall. Yeah. I can read it and go, like, really? And kind of just like get a little bit jovial with it, and just play for it and go, that old fucking chestnut. Like, really? And I'll just sit there alone and go, that's interesting that you're going back there. Like, do you really want to go back there? And I'm not belittling myself, but I am being playful about it, because it just softens that part of me that just wants to revert back to nobody likes me, everybody hates me, or like whatever, whatever the wound is that's been activated through perceived rejection. It's not even real. It's just perceived, or perceived powerlessness, or perceived worthlessness. And I can just get really playful and go, are you really going to go back? Are you really just going to use your example, you're really just going to go and eat chips on the couch and just have a wawa? And maybe that's the healthiest thing I can do in that moment. Maybe that is the most congruent, aligned expression to be with that shadow for a moment. But in knowing all the other possibilities, maybe it's not. So I would never poo-poo that. I think it's actually like a stroke of genius, chips and Netflix. But when you know other opportunities, it's like, is that really the one you're going to go to, when you have this breadth of other opportunities of what you could do through your body and with your skill set and with your toolkit right now? So if you want to have more fun in your life, I'm going to give you the most backwards advice. If you're listening, you have to get so serious about your shit, because you'll never be present in the moment with pure joy and fun and playfulness for as long as that stuff is there. It's going to dominate and say, you are not worthy of being present with this joy and this fun and this playfulness right now, because you've got this other stuff that's like just knocking and knocking and knocking and tugging at your, the little child is like tugging and asking for your attention. So go there, and you can have that lightness. Go to the shadow and you can have the light. Like, it just comes so much more easily when you're not burdened.
Yeah.
You're not burdened.
Yeah, I agree. My first coach, Alicia, said to me, and this was profound for me at the time, she said, the extent to which you avoid I think she said negative emotions, but we'll call it shadow, call it the darkness, call it the wound, the extent to which we avoid that discomfort is the extent to which we keep the joy, the happiness, the ecstasy, the satisfaction, the freedom at a distance.
Yes.
So and you know, another it's like, it makes sense, right? Because if we're avoiding something, what we're doing is we're putting up a force field around us not to feel it, but then that force field keeps all the good shit out too.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, it's very effective. It's very it keeps us suspended in a numbness that also keeps out the good. You're exactly right. Bang on. So I want to have more fun. And then you do something, but you're not there, and you're checked out the whole time, and your mind's just somewhere else. And sex is a great example of that.
It is.
It's
a
great,
really
it really
great example.
highlights that. So yeah, I just want to say, yes, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah. I'm curious about when you're working with your clients, and is it oftentimes new for them to start to incorporate like sexual energy and their bodies and all of the tools and aspects of your life and your experience and your wisdom that you bring to your body of work? Is it oftentimes new for them, or are they like already in tune in that conversation and you show up and you just take them further? Like, which of those is more common for you?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. It used to be, when I worked solely as a sex therapist, which I did for 8 years, before I 2020 said, you're going to be a confidant now and you're going to be a mentor. I was like, do I have to change? Like, but I did have to change. I had to go through that discomfort. So before then, when I worked as a sex therapist, I attracted and I called in women that some of them had never been to a counselor before. Like they'd never done like personal growth, any sort of personal growth work before. They might have read some books, but it was nothing where an actual commitment was made. When I pivoted the work in 2020, I started calling in people who'd done something, but it hadn't had a sensuality, like thread to it. It might have been like they've done some personal growth work, but the personal growth work they've done doesn't go to the sexuality piece. It doesn't go to the sacral center piece. So the more that I do this, the more women have explored different areas of mindset work or yoga or this program or that program, but it's not got the full throttle. Let's put your energy at the front of it. Let's put the energy at the front of your business and then use your energy to inform the strategy. Let's put the fun. What would it be like to put the fun at the forefront of your business? But what would it be like to charge X instead of Y? But I can't do that because I'm a blah, 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 like insert job title here. So it's really challenging. When they come to me, they've done something and they've been stirred up, and it's usually mindset, like they've done something mindset. They really love books. They really love podcasts. And they take a lot of information in, but the gap, to use your former mentor's like analogy, the gap is that they're consuming, but they're not actioning. Like they're taking a lot in. They've got inquisitive minds. They're incredibly bright. They're so bright. Some of them have doctor at the title. Like they've been through at the rungs of academia. Where the gap is it's all the information is sitting up here, but there's not the accountability to bring it down to the body and express it from here. And there's also a fear of doing that because academia just hammers in, it all comes from here. This is where your power is.
Yeah.
It all needs to be written in a certain way, said in a certain way. And by the time they come to me, they've been out of academia for a while, and this just has so much to say. So it's a lot. The first step is always that permission to express from here, and their bodies are often quite tight. They're tight, they're contracted, their little girl got a message from 5 years old that she had to be perfect, that she had to get good grades, and the body just got no recognition. Playfulness wasn't espoused or endorsed.
Yeah.
And so so the more I do this work, the more they've done, but it doesn't mean the part that I had to recognize, and I only recognized it this year. I was like, oh, yes, they know a lot, but they don't know. No, they're not operating from the knowing.
Yeah.
They're operating from the know. I know. Yeah, I know. I know.
Uh-huh.
I know you know. And I say things like, you probably already know this, but I'm just saying you probably already know this, but they don't like the part where I come in is making it a knowing from deep down.
I love that. And I'm not surprised that you just described me on so many levels, right? The needing to get good grades and even though I'm very much a free spirit and like a wild child running around naked and stuff, big surprise, that definitely was not allowed. And so what I learned to just shut it all down and like become the valedictorian, right? Like, just use my intellect, which I'm so grateful that I have. But I didn't have as much encouragement or freedom to explore these additional facets of my being that I believe now through wisdom and experience are as intelligent, if not more so, than my intellect, my ability to learn, and so, yeah, and that is another one of those telltale signs, like when I'm sitting here banging it out, writing an article or whatever it is, and I'm all up in my intellect, or which is a beautiful thing, and I love it. I get in flow state, so I'm not criticizing any of this, but that the taxation on my physical body and the tightening and the containing, that, I mean, it's so evident for me, Lauren. Like I literally have to get up and move, and like an octopus, like I have to get real weird and stuff, so that, because the body is like, because I'm all head and I'm not enough in that fluid body, feminine stuff that I am as well. And it's just it's so obvious. And then again, circling back to, and then what happens? Well, I've shut down that flow of God energy, of, infinite energy, all of the intuition, all of that serves me and my clients so well. And so it's, I love that we're having this conversation because I needed it. Little reminder. Yeah.
We all, I just have the strongest desire to always bring humanity into these conversations, and like to really take people who are in this work off a major pedestal, to say that we're in the thick of it with you. And I forget as well. And that's where, because I've been in a surge lately that requires me to be on a computer. Like that's just what is required. And it's so funny. I'm just sitting here going, I really need to step away from it now and just go, I really do need to go play, because then when I sit back down again, and this is what high performers need to hear as well, trust that doing the opposite of what your mind tells you to do, which is sit the fuck down, pump this out, get it out. What if the best investment of your time is stepping away, going and playing, putting your body in water? That's one of my favorite things to do. Any form of water. I love ice bars. I love spas. I love ocean. I love pools. I love any body of water. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Dealer's choice, a bath. What if putting your body in water for half an hour and then you come back? And I'll be so curious as to how much more productive, efficient, how much more of a flow state you're in. And it's one of the reasons why I love doing laps. One of my things in my toolkit I didn't mention. I do laps because you just keep swimming and you are literally in flow. excuse me, in the water. So what if you did that and then came back and you bang out your work in 45 minutes instead of 4 scatty, like checked out hours? What if? Like just put it to yourself, put it to your shadow as a question. Just what if, shadow? What if we play with this for a while and we step away and we go to this thing which seems, brain, I know you're having a fucking field day with this one. Like I know you're saying, no, I've got to sit down. But what if you just entertain me for a moment and we go to this thing and then we come back and let's just see what happens. Let's just experiment and get curious about it. And it's incredible when we bring that language and that approach in, how different the quality of our life can be and our productivity as well.
I love that. I agree. I love that you just shared something very actionable. That is a little challenging. You mean I should stop in the middle of the day and go take a bath or what?
Circuit breaker. What if you just need to have a really cold or a really hot bath? Maybe you need to get hot and just feel some sweat and like just feel that motion. Sweat is emotion, blood moving is emotion. You need some motion if you're stagnant. So what if you just go do that and get curious and just give yourself 15 minutes if half an hour feels too edgy. I'm just going to do it for 15 minutes and see what happens. And I'd just be curious about what happens when you sit back down at that computer after doing something you're not meant to do. And I say things like, you're so fucking naughty doing, this is like, you're like fucking maverick rule breaker. Like, what are you doing? Like, just get really, if you can, just get really playful in the way that you talk to yourself about it. And to me, I think that's what this work is. That's what the metaphysical is. It's like just getting playful with the language and your body and the order in which you do things. Like, this isn't the logical order. Like just bring the future into the now, bring up something from the past that you used to love. Like, I'm going to get my Polly Pockets out. I'm going to or just just whatever it is. Like, just that to me is where we find our freedom. And I think that's the point.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love your energy, your light, your brilliance, your willingness, you're unique. You're like a disco ball. You're just so cool and wonderful. And I am so grateful that you have taken some time to have this conversation with me and everybody that tunes in. Before we sign off, though, anything that we haven't touched on that you feel is relevant, or you just like, oh my God, I got to say this thing. Like, I'm handing you the mic. What do you want to talk about, babe?
Handing me the mic. I feel just incredibly overjoyed that this is what I call my life, which is deep diving into these energetics, being human, playing in my body. And I just want, even though this isn't the mission for everyone, like this is not the calling for everyone in this lifetime, I'm grateful. It's not meant to be all of our calling. What I want to say to people listening right now is it doesn't have to be your calling. It doesn't have to dominate your life. It's really the biggest key and the biggest, the biggest key to all of this is your curiosity. Like, just not watching the reflex of, I know, like that knee jerk. I know. Yeah, you might know, but are you doing? Are you congruent with that knowing? And is that knowing really landed in your body? Like, we all know all the things. We're in an era of information overload. Doesn't mean doing, doesn't mean being in alignment with, doesn't mean that it's the right fit for you. One person's like, if you suggest yoga to me, I'm probably going to bop you and say, I'm going to go box instead. Like, it's about doing what is right for you and doing what is right for your energy and coming back to your body and coming back 1,000,000 times over. None of us are immune. None of us are immune because we live in the real world.
Mhm.
So even though this isn't necessarily your calling or your mission, the big piece I want to leave with you is to remain curious, to watch, to always put congruence first, to go, I know this thing, but am I doing this thing, or is it the right fit for me? And is it in alignment with where I'm at and where I want to expand and what edges I want to meet? So just keep that curiosity at the forefront of life, of business, of what happens in the bedroom, of what happens in your body. And I promise you, you're never losing. You're never making a mistake. You are simply learning and expanding and inviting, allowing yourself to have a rich life, which means that your memoirs are going to be way more interesting than your neighbors who is defaulting to numbness, check out, it's too hard, I'll just do the status quo, I'll just live by the rule book that doesn't actually exist. Like your life will be rich and interesting, and you're going to sit back one day with complete satisfaction that you went there because you stayed curious. Mm-hmm. So that to me is the key to everything that you want. It always starts with curiosity.
Yeah. I love that. And I agree. I think curiosity is one of the most useful qualities that we can have. And the flip side to that, the thing that often leaves us feeling a little lackluster or flat, is the thinking that we know, right? Oh, I know.
No.
And the translation, I have a background in intimacy coaching for a number of years. That was the foundation of my work. And that was the thing that I would say. When a client would say, "Oh, I know what they're going to say when I blah blah blah. I know them so well. They're going to da 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 da." And I said, "You're like, there's your problem, right? There's the crux of the thing, is you no longer have the curiosity. You think you know, and therefore nothing can change.
Yes.
As long as you think you know, and you don't even attempt to, I don't know, invite them on a date or whatever. I'm just saying some random shit. But like, the thinking that we know kills the curiosity. And from that perspective, kills the intimacy. Yeah. And there's nowhere to go from there. So I love that you brought that up. And then of course that translates into everything that we do. It can translate into our business, in the nuances of our business, like marketing and sales and, partnerships. It translates into our health and our well-being. If we think we know what's going to happen, if I, fast for a day and this is going to happen because it happened before, instead of getting curious, let me see what would happen now if I fasted or whatever, again, using some random example, but it's true for every area of our lives. The curiosity, or, then there's nowhere to go. So anyway, I think that's a wonderful place to wrap this particular conversation up. And again, thank you so much for your beauty and your wisdom and your insight, and being willing to add the context of metaphysics into this conversation. I think that for people like you and I, we may not talk about it necessarily, but it's an underpinning. It's an element, a remarkable element of the work that we do. And my intention with Let's Get Naked and the work that I do now is to bring it more into the light, right? Out of the fringe and into the mainstream, so to speak. So thank you for being willing to lead the way with me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for hosting, and thank you for seeing me. Like your words really, they've always spoken to my heart and my soul, and the words that you've imparted today, like I'm incredibly humbled and ecstatic, like simultaneously humbled and ecstatic. So thank you for seeing me, and thank you for creating such a safe space where we can go there with the topics that are incredibly illuminating, but most people, it's not that they don't want to have these conversations, they do, but they don't know where to start. And so I trust that this conversation was a fire starter for a number of people that just didn't know where to start looking with with all of this that's still, so, like you said, so fringe and so taboo. So thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. All right, well, signing off, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.